At my brother's birthday party, I accidentally bumped into my jealous sister-in-law, and that's when everything exploded. Without warning, she slapped me across the face and yelled, "Are you blind?" My brother told me to apologize, but I was furious and refused. That night, I promised myself revenge. The next day, I delivered a shocking surprise that changed everything. My name is Nina, and until recently, I thought my life was predictable, maybe even comfortably simple. I'm a 30-year-old graphic designer in San Francisco. For as long as I can remember, it's just been me and my younger brother, Ryan. We grew up side by side, inseparable and incredibly close. Ryan is 27 now, working as a financial analyst, and we've both built good lives for ourselves in the same city. Life was easygoing, and we found joy in the little things, in the quiet familiarity of family. But that changed when Ryan met Jenna. I met Jenna for the first time at a family gathering for Ryan's birthday. Ryan had always been somewhat reserved about relationships, so his eagerness to introduce her came as a surprise. He was absolutely glowing. "Nina, you're going to love her," he had said, his excitement contagious. When I looked at Jenna, I could see why he was so taken with her. She was stunningly attractive, tall, confident, and charismatic, with a smile that lit up the room. She seemed like everything Ryan had been waiting for, and at that moment, I thought I'd found a new friend too. In the beginning, Jenna seemed perfect for our family. She was charming, engaging, and genuinely seemed to care for Ryan. I was happy for him. He deserved someone special, and she seemed to make him happy. However, as the months went by, subtle changes in her behavior began to creep in, and they left me feeling uneasy. Initially, it was just small, seemingly harmless comments that Jenna would make when we were alone. They were the kind of remarks that could easily be passed off as jokes, but they left me feeling uncomfortable. At family gatherings, she'd say things like, "Nina, maybe it's time to update your wardrobe. That outfit is so last season." She'd laugh it off, but the look in her eyes was far from friendly. I brushed it aside at first, thinking maybe I was reading too much into it. But it continued, each comment cutting a little deeper. One Thanksgiving, I made a pumpkin pie from a cherished family recipe passed down from our grandmother. I'd spent hours perfecting it, feeling a sense of pride as I placed it on the dinner table. Jenna, however, was quick to comment, "I thought I was supposed to bring dessert this year." Her tone was casual, but her words stung. There was a silence, and I forced a smile, saying, "Must have slipped my mind." Inside, though, I felt humiliated. As time went on, Jenna's remarks became sharper. It wasn't just about trivial things like my clothes or my baking. She started making more personal jabs. Once, at dinner, she looked at me and said with a sly smile, "Still single, Nina? Maybe dating would help with your personality." She delivered it like a joke, but it felt like a slap in the face. I tried to laugh it off, but deep down, I felt embarrassed and hurt. I brought it up with Ryan once, hoping he'd understand, but he brushed it off. "Jenna's just teasing Nina," he said, dismissing my concerns. I didn't want to create problems for him, especially since he seemed so happy, so I stayed quiet, hoping things would improve. Instead, Jenna's actions intensified. She began leaving me out of family plans and deleting messages Ryan sent me. It felt like she was slowly erasing my presence from his life. One day, I opened up to my best friend, Taylor, during a coffee date. "Taylor, there's something off about Jenna," I confessed. "It's like she's trying to push me out of Ryan's life." "Are you sure?" Taylor asked, looking concerned. "Maybe she's just awkward around you." "No, it's not that. She makes these subtle jabs that make me feel small," I replied, a knot tightening in my stomach. "But I don't want to create tension for Ryan. He's so happy with her, and I don't want to ruin it." Taylor looked at me with understanding. "Nina, you've always been there for Ryan. You shouldn't have to feel unwelcome in your own family." Taylor's words gave me a sense of validation, but I still felt paralyzed. I worried that confronting the issue might drive a wedge between Ryan and me, especially given how invested he was in Jenna. So I stayed quiet, even as I felt myself drifting further from the family dynamic I once treasured. Everything came to a head one night at another family gathering for Ryan's birthday. It was supposed to be a joyful celebration, but tension was brewing. I walked into the living room, found an open seat, and settled in. Just then, Jenna entered and immediately fixed me with a hard stare. Her expression darkened, and she snapped, "That's my seat." Caught off guard, I blinked in confusion. "I didn't know it was saved," I said, trying to keep my tone light. But Jenna didn't back down. "You should know by now," she said, her voice dripping with irritation. The room fell silent. My heart pounded as everyone's eyes turned to us. Trying to defuse the situation, I replied, "It's just a chair, Jenna. Let's not make a scene." She wasn't having it. Standing up, she narrowed her eyes and said, "You're always trying to steal my spotlight. You're always taking everything from me." Her words hit me like a physical blow. "I'm not trying to take anything," I said quietly, struggling to keep my composure. "I just wanted to sit down." But she raised her voice, her tone filled with anger. "I've had enough of it," she declared, her accusation hanging in the air. I realized then that this was about more than just a chair or a casual comment. Jenna was determined to drive a wedge between Ryan and me, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. I left the party that night, my mind swirling with anger and frustration. I felt like I had lost my place in my own family, pushed out by someone who seemed intent on erasing me from Ryan's life. That night, something in me shifted. I decided I wasn't going to let Jenna erase the bond one shared with my brother. The night I walked out of Ryan's birthday party felt like a breaking point. My emotions were tangled, and I was consumed by frustration and betrayal. Jenna had crossed a line, and I could no longer ignore how deeply she was affecting my life. It wasn't just about her sharp remarks or possessive attitude over a chair. It was about everything I had silently endured, how she'd turned my own brother against me. Jenna had manipulated everyone around her, especially Ryan. I knew I couldn't let this continue. I wanted to keep my relationship with my brother intact, but not at the cost of pretending that everything was fine. Jenna's presence was poisoning our family, and I couldn't stay silent any longer. That night, I called Taylor, my best friend. She'd been my rock through thick and thin, and now I needed her more than ever. "Taylor, I need help," I said, my voice trembling. "What happened?" she asked, immediately sensing my distress. "Jenna slapped me tonight, in front of everyone," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "And Ryan, he apologized to her instead of standing up for me. It's like he's blind to what she's doing." Taylor listened quietly before saying, "This isn't just her being rude, Nina. Jenna's trying to take control, to cut you out of Ryan's life. And so far, she's succeeding." "I know," I whispered. "But I don't know how to make him see it. He's so wrapped up in her." "Then it's time to fight back," Taylor said firmly. "Remember, I'm a lawyer. You're not alone in this. We can find out who Jenna really is. If there's anything in her past that reveals her true character, then Ryan needs to see it." For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Taylor was right. I didn't have to face this alone. We formed a plan. Taylor introduced me to a private investigator she knew, someone who could discreetly look into Jenna's past. Although I felt nervous, I realized it was my best chance to show Ryan the truth about the woman who was driving us apart. The investigator didn't take long to uncover alarming details about Jenna's history. She wasn't the person she pretended to be. Behind her polished facade, there were disturbing patterns, past relationships filled with rumors of cheating, allegations of manipulation, and even legal troubles, including a few restraining orders from former partners. It was shocking to realize how thoroughly Jenna had concealed her true self from all of us. The picture was clear. Jenna was skilled at deceiving and manipulating people to get what she wanted, and Ryan was her latest target. I knew I needed to tell Ryan everything, but fear gnawed at me. What if he didn't believe me? What if he thought I was simply trying to destroy his happiness? But I knew the risks of staying silent outweighed my fears. I couldn't let Jenna continue to control our lives. The next day, I gathered all the evidence, texts, photos, and police records. I asked Ryan to meet me, determined to show him the truth. When he arrived, he seemed cheerful, but I could see a distant look in his eyes, as though he was living in a world where Jenna was his everything, and I was merely a distraction. "Ryan, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even as my heart pounded. He looked concerned. Is something wrong?
Yes.
It's about Jenna, I said, tightening my grip on the folder of evidence. I've looked into her past, and you need to see who she really is. She's been involved with other men, and there's evidence of illegal activity. I didn't want to believe it, but I can't ignore it anymore. Ryan's face turned pale. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice shaky. Jenna wouldn't do that. I handed him the folder, my own hands trembling. Please, just look. Ryan flipped through the documents, photos, text messages, restraining orders, and I watched as the reality sank in. He looked devastated, his world unraveling with each page. Finally, he looked up, his expression broken. I had no idea, he whispered. I'm sorry I had to do this, I said, my voice soft. But she's been manipulating you. This isn't the brother I know. She's controlling everything, and you deserve better. Ryan was silent for a long moment, and I saw the pain and anger growing in his eyes. I don't know what to say, he murmured. I didn't see any of it. Now you know, I said, my tone resolute. It's time to take action. You deserve a life that isn't built on lies. Ryan nodded slowly, his anger shifting to determination. You're right. This has to end. In that moment, I knew everything was about to change. Ryan had finally seen the truth, and Jenna would no longer have the power to divide us. After revealing the evidence to Ryan, everything was left in suspense. For the first time, he saw Jenna as the manipulative person she was, someone who'd lied to him and taken control of his life. But even though I could see anger and hurt in his eyes, I wasn't sure what he'd do next. Would he confront her? Would he find the strength to break free? The following days were filled with uncertainty. Ryan was distant, deep in thought, clearly struggling with the truth he'd just learned. I hated watching him wrestle with these feelings, torn between his love for Jenna and the painful reality now staring him in the face. I tried to be patient, but inside, I was frustrated. I couldn't just sit by while Jenna continued her games, pushing me further from my own brother. Then one evening, Ryan called. His voice was strained, like he'd been holding something in. Nina, we need to talk, he said, his tone serious. My heart raced. I knew this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Maybe he'd finally made a decision. When we met, Ryan looked exhausted, his face pale, eyes red from sleepless nights. I confronted Jenna, he said, his voice shaky. She didn't deny any of it. A chill ran through me. What did she say? She told me I was the one ruining things, that you were trying to tear us apart. She twisted it all, made it sound like I was the problem. Ryan's hands shook as he recounted the encounter, and I could see how deeply her manipulation had wounded him.
But I know now.
I see what she's done. I can't believe I didn't see it before. I sighed, relieved. Finally, he was beginning to understand. What will you do? I asked, searching his face for resolve. He looked at the floor, uncertain. I'm not sure where to start. You have to take action, Ryan. Stop her before she destroys our family completely. You have the evidence, file for divorce, go to the police. Don't let her get away with this. He paused, his face etched with conflict, but then his jaw tightened and a spark of determination flickered in his eyes. You're right. This can't go on. In that moment, it felt like a weight had lifted. Ryan was ready to act. The days that followed were filled with hard choices. Ryan filed for divorce, and, armed with the evidence, he reached out to the police. He was prepared to expose Jenna for her lies, for how she'd torn apart his life, and mine. It was painful, but I could see a newfound strength in him as he took back control. Then came the inevitable. The police arrived at Jenna's apartment. I watched from afar as she was taken into custody. Her face was a mixture of shock and anger. She tried to argue her innocence, but the evidence was overwhelming. Jenna was finally being held accountable for the manipulative and deceitful path she'd carved through our lives. Watching her led away in handcuffs, I felt a rush of mixed emotions, relief, anger, even sadness. This wasn't how I'd wanted things to end, but it was the only way to protect our family. In that moment, I felt closure, though I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter. As the weeks passed, Ryan and I began the slow process of rebuilding. It wasn't easy. The scars Jenna left would take time to heal. But we had each other, and that meant everything. As we moved forward, one question lingered. Would Ryan ever truly be free from Jenna's influence? Would he recover from the years of manipulation and betrayal? Only time would tell. But for the first time in months, I felt hopeful about the future. It's strange how life can change in the blink of an eye. One moment, you're living your life the way you've always known it, and the next, everything you thought you understood is turned upside down. That's what happened to me after Jenna was arrested. She was gone, but the mess she left behind lingered. For weeks, Ryan and I struggled to process everything that had happened, to come to terms with how far Jenna's deception had gone. But one thing I knew for sure, things would never be the same. Ryan was trying, I could see that. But it wasn't easy. I watched him, still trying to piece himself back together. The anger in his eyes had faded, but there was a new sadness there, one that hadn't been there before. He had been so blinded by love for so long that now, with everything revealed, he seemed lost in the aftermath. One evening, we were sitting together in my apartment. The city lights twinkled outside, but inside, everything felt quieter, calmer. We'd spent the night talking about everything and nothing, and for the first time in months, I felt like my brother was starting to come back to me. I don't even know who I was anymore, he admitted quietly, looking out the window. It's like I was living in someone else's reality. I didn't know what to say. All I could do was sit there with him, understanding that the healing process would take time. You're not alone in this, Ryan. I'm still here. I always will be. He turned to me, and for the first time in a long time, his eyes seemed lighter, more present. I'm sorry for everything, Nina. I should have seen it. I should have been there for you. No one saw it, Ryan. Not at first, I said softly, reaching out to take his hand. But we're here now, and that's what matters. The days that followed weren't easy, but we were making progress. Ryan was slowly rebuilding his life, step by step. The anger he once held toward me for interfering with his relationship had faded, replaced by gratitude. He was finally able to see Jenna for who she really was, and as much as it pained him, he was ready to move on. He had filed for divorce, and the process was moving forward. The police charges against Jenna were serious, and the evidence was irrefutable. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison for her illegal activities and the harm she had caused, not only to Ryan and me, but to others as well. When I heard the news, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and even a little guilt. I had done what was necessary, but I couldn't help but wonder if things could have been different, if I had done something sooner, or if we had all seen the signs earlier. But those thoughts were quickly pushed aside. Jenna had made her choices, and she was now facing the consequences. The only thing left was for Ryan and me to pick up the pieces and move on with our lives. As the weeks passed, things started to feel more normal. Ryan and I spent more time together, working through the fallout from everything that had happened. We began to rebuild the bond that had been fractured by Jenna's manipulation. It wasn't an easy road, but every day felt like a small victory. Our family was healing, slowly but surely, and for the first time in a long while, we were starting to feel whole again. But even with everything that had happened, I knew one thing. I had changed. I had fought for myself and for my family. I had stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. And I had learned that no matter how painful it was, sometimes you have to face the truth, no matter what it costs. Sitting in my apartment one evening, watching the sunset over the city, I realized just how much stronger I had become. I wasn't the same person I was before Jenna came into our lives. And that was okay. I had learned to trust myself again. I had learned the importance of loyalty, truth, and standing up for those you love. Ryan had learned the same. And though the scars from the past would always be there, we had come through it stronger than before. It was hard to believe how much our lives had changed in such a short time. But as we faced the future, together, I knew we would be okay. The road ahead was still uncertain. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt. But we had each other, and that was enough. I felt a deep sense of peace that night, knowing that whatever happened next, I was ready for it. The story of betrayal and revenge was over, but our story, Ryan's and mine, was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I had hope for the future.